Well, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. My name is Justin Peter. I'm director of the Quest Nature Tours program of Worldwide Quest. I'm really excited to host you for today's very interesting, what should be very interesting webinar. We know that many of you have been enjoying our series of webinars that have been going on, that have been occasioned by the pandemic. And you know what, it's certainly been an interesting spring and summer so far, but we're really glad to be able to connect with all of you, for those of you who are returning. And if you're just joining us for your first webinar today, remember or be aware that we in fact are holding a library. We have a full library of all of our webinars from March onwards on our website. So you can go back and watch these anytime you'd like. And in fact, this webinar here will be recorded and you'll have a chance to view this again. You will receive a link to this recording so you can see this one again. And it's really an excellent webinar today, I think. Many of you know that India is one of our signature destinations, and I have a bit of a bias because I have Indian ancestry, but I can say that if I think of India, it just brings a smile to my face, and I just can't wait to go back there. You know, it's a huge country, you know, one of the largest countries in the world. And I think what surprises, I mean, we have different tours going to India. We have cultural tours, we have the Quest Nature tours. I think one thing that surprises many of our nature-oriented travelers, those who are looking for wildlife experiences, when they go to India, I think maybe there's the impression that it's just a cultural destination. But I think once you get there and you start traveling, you realize, first of all, this country is big. I mean, it really is big. But you come to see fairly quickly that this is a supremely interesting destination from a wildlife perspective. Even if you were just going for wildlife, I think you would find so much of interest there. And one of the maybe surprising forms of wildlife is the leopard. I think many of us associate leopards with Africa because you can see them in Africa. They have, you know, huge range. I'm not going to get into the story of the leopard, but surprising to many and to the delight of many, as I myself discovered on the last India tour that I led, leopards, you can go to certain places and see leopards fairly easily. They're in the country and throughout. So today's webinar is going to be presented not by yours truly, but by my colleague in India. Her name is Payal, and Payal will be with us in a moment. And Payal is our, you know, I'm introducing you to her not just as a speaker. Hi, Payal. But Payal is our, how are you, Payal?
Very good.
What time is it in India?
7:30 p.m.
30 p.m. That's great. Well, we're so glad you're here to join us. And just to let everyone know, Payal is our preferred naturalist guide in India. So for the tours that we do to India, different types of tours, natural history focused, Payal is our local guide. So on our last tour, I've had a chance to travel with Payal on both of our last Northwest India tours. And in fact, Payal will be leading our snow leopards tour, our delayed snow leopards tour, which will be taking place next April, and then our grand Northwest India wildlife extravaganza, that will be in February, March of 2022. So, I mean, it's been a delight for me to know Payal personally. She knows, I want to say she knows everything. She always has a wonderful answer for all of our questions about India and all of our, and she is really very highly rated by all of our Quest travelers. So Payal, today we're really looking forward to hearing and learning more about the unusual life of leopards in India. And without further ado, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Justin, and thank you for the kind words. Hello, everybody, and good morning. And before I start my presentation, I am going to just give me a moment. Just a little warning that you might hear ambient sounds from around here, dogs barking or a clang of vessels from my neighbor's house. So please ignore them, and I hope I'll keep you interested and you know, in my talk. So here we are. The unusual life of leopards, like Justin very correctly said. that not many people think of India as a wildlife destination, but there is a reason for it, and you will hear about it as we go through. So quickly, just a little warm up about the leopard. As you know, it's a beautiful elegant yellow cat with a really gorgeous print of rosettes on its body. It's one of the 5 big cats of the world. It's a carnivore, a top predator, but it's also very opportunistic. It can eat anything from a little hare to a deer much larger than its size. It's solitary, doesn't form prides like the lion. It's territorial and found in Africa and Asia. And of course, the camouflage, how can I forget about it, right? So many times, those of you who've traveled in Africa or Asia looking for leopards, you'll know it, that so many times you must have been looking at a leopard and still not seeing it. So a little bit about India. What makes India, such an unusual place for wildlife? India is actually that's where it is. You can see it where it lies in the world, and for its size, it has a really large number of animals, a very large biodiversity. Speaking of mammals, in an area that is about 2.5% of the world's land area, it has about 8% of the world's mammals. And then there's similar ratios for birds, reptiles, amphibians, even insects. Speaking to give you a more perspective, a clearer perspective about the size, you can fit about 2.5 or 3 Indias in America. So what is it that makes a country like India so full of wildlife? And the one main reason is just the variety of landforms and landscapes that are there in the country, from the very high Himalayas to the north to a very long coastline, hills and mountains all across, deserts, and all these, along with our very bountiful monsoon that's going on just now, which drenches many parts of the country for 3 months. All of this combined forms so many different ecosystems and microhabitats in the country, which supports such a large variety of wildlife. The next picture, this one, is not really detailed, but it broadly kind of shows you the different areas. You know, the gray area right on the top, which says Trans Himalayas, that's a high altitude cold desert. Its average height must be 15 to 18,000 feet. And the trip that Justin just mentioned, the snow leopards, this is the region where we go to look for snow leopards. Lower down, the green belt going all the way from the east to the west is the Himalayan Mountains, which are almost as old as your Rockies. And as you come south, you will see everything from deserts to highlands, plateaus, floodplains, the long coastline, and last but not the least, even island systems. In the ocean on either side, you will see the Lakshadweep Islands, and to your right-hand side, you will see in purple the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And all of this combined is one of the main reasons why we have such a large diversity of animals in the country. Did you know we have 4 of the 5 wild cats of the world in India? So of course there's the leopard. What you see to your top right hand side corner is the snow leopard, of course. You have the tiger and even the lion. Most people think that lions are only in Africa. So many guests of ours have been surprised to know that there is a population, a species called the Asiatic lions, which are found in India. And these, along with the other small and mid-sized cats, like the fishing cat here on the top left-hand corner, and then the central one, which is the rusty spotted cat, which contests with one of the smallest cats in the world, wild cats in the world. We have 40% of the world's wild cats. So, and of all of these, I feel that the most successful cat is the leopards. When biologists speak about successful, they usually mean successful in terms of evolution, as in how many million years a species has survived, or sometimes they refer to just sheer numbers, population sizes. Like humans are termed as a very successful species in the world. That's almost purely based on the sheer numbers. But here, success by success, it's a story of adaptation. It's a story of how this leopard is living in this country. Some of you will say, oh, so what's the big deal? I mean, all tropical countries have such great biodiversity. So what's so unique about India? Just look at this country. We are full of people. There are 1.3 billion people living with all this wildlife. Like Justin just mentioned, that most people think of India as a cultural destination. I think one of the main reasons is because there's so many people and such a large diversity within the population, which is a very, very interesting part. But along with these people are so much wildlife living. In some parts of the country, we have densities going up to 100,000 people living in 1 square kilometer. It's huge. Here in the photographs, what I'm trying to show is, if you look at the one to your left, it is the picture, it's a satellite image of India on a Diwali night. Diwali, like some of you may know, it's the festival of lights. Look how fully lit it is. There are hardly any dark spots. It just shows how many people live here. And to the right is just a small depiction of our road networks. And these are just the national and the state highways. It is none of the minor roads. In this situation, one would feel it's impossible to any wildlife to live here, let alone these great numbers of wildlife. And the interesting thing is that not only I mean, this wildlife includes even large mammals, like from rhinos. India has the largest population of one-horned rhinos. It has the largest population of wild tigers, largest population of Asiatic elephants, and all of these animals, the mammals, the birds, the reptiles, everyone is living in this very, very populated country. Yes, we do have some protected areas, sanctuaries set aside for wildlife. But look at the map of protected areas. They are like little sprinkle of pepper on this country, with little islands and small pockets far away from each other. And of these, some are well protected, most aren't really well protected, and none of these are completely fenced. And in this situation, sorry, it would surprise anyone of how this country has so much wildlife. So let's come to the leopard again. So what is it so special about the leopard? So one, the leopard can live in a variety of habitats. It's extremely adaptable. Here you're seeing a leopard. It can live in a grassland habitat. It can live in a rocky habitat with almost no vegetation cover. This, in fact, is a picture of Justin Peter. Some of you may have noticed. It was on one of our previous trips. Um, it can live in a very dense forest in evergreen rainforests. It can live even in a deciduous forest. And what you're seeing in front of here is the rare melanistic form of the leopard. Yes, it does remind you of Bagheera from Jungle Book, or those of you who've read the book or watched the movie. It is very, very rare, but nowadays you can actually go and see these in India as well. Um, so yeah, so here we have a wildcat who can live in a variety of wild habitats. That's certainly not the story, right? Look at this photograph. What you're seeing here, as some of you may recognize, are tea gardens. This one particular photo is a tea garden from south of India. These tea gardens are continuously visited by tea workers. There's constant everyday presence of humans in this area, and leopards have called this home as well. Can any of you spot the leopard in this photo? On the left side bottom corner, you will see that there's a leopard standing there. It's tiny one in this big landscape. And these leopards who live in human dominated areas are so smart. They have learned to be active as soon as human activity ends. That's when they get active. And they can be quite nocturnal also, depending on where they are. Like in the next slide, here, this picture is from the outskirts of the city of Bangalore. What you see in front of you, the brown area, is a concrete road. It's a road, and right behind you can see a little lawn and a housing area. This is a photograph in the daytime, and this is the same place at night. Similarly, the area where I showed you the picture, Justin's picture of the leopard, this is again from the same landscape. You see there is a shrine here. This is an active shrine, and people visit this shrine every day. And right there to your top right is a leopard sitting. Actually, this reminds me of one of our sightings, Justin, where we were with a group of our quest guests, and we were watching a leopard. We had left from our lodge at the crack of dawn, and or even maybe before, maybe it was not even light, and you drive around these rocky outcrops, and we had spotted a leopard. We were watching a leopard, and suddenly the leopard got alert and a twitch in its tail, and we started looking around. We knew something had caught its attention, and no sooner than we knew, the priest of one of these shrines was walking in, and just at a comfortable distance, just when it was getting too close, the leopard got up and walked away like it was never there. So that's how these adapt. They are so amazing. The priest didn't even see that there was a leopard sitting right there by the shrine. And here is my favorite, my hometown. This is a picture from the city of Mumbai. This is a bridge, and behind that, the windows that you see is a big housing complex. And this particular area where this photograph was taken must have a population density of at least 18 to 20,000 people per square kilometer. And right here, few moments later, is this, a leopard walking right by. And that's still not it. Look at this one. You're seeing, this is again a photograph from Mumbai. To your left, you see the leopard, and to the right, you're seeing a human sleeping, a villager sleeping, who is certainly more concerned about mosquito nets, because there's a mosquito net over him, and there is a leopard right there walking past. And my favorite of all, look at this one. Here we have a leopard in a toy shop. This is really surprising, but believe me, this is not rare. We have footage, CCTV footage of leopards from shopping malls at night, from schools, we have from housing complex. So this is how the leopard is living in this country. And of course, there are interactions. Interactions and confrontations are inevitable in this situation. The photograph that you're seeing on the top is a leopard in the city of Udaipur, one of the hottest parts of India. And at night, it had come for a drink of water, and his head got stuck in a water, we call it a matka, it's a pot, aluminium pot. And that's how people found him in the morning. And in this scenario, injuries and sometimes, unfortunately, even deaths happen on both sides. India is in a situation where the only way to conserve its wildlife is to reduce these conflicts as much as possible. India also has a small but a really robust community of scientists and conservationists. And my story from here on about the leopard is through the study of one such scientist. Her name is Vidya Atreya, and the photograph in front of you is one of her study sites. It's a small agricultural town. And I'll tell you what she found here. So it's an agricultural town, and she saw that, that this is how people are, right? Our first reaction to any problem is to eliminate the problem. So every time a leopard was seen in and around these fields around this town, people started calling up the forest department or animal rescue NGOs asking for the leopards to be taken away. And India started a whole bunch of relocations. So this was, I'm talking about early 2000s, it's really not long ago, where lots of leopards were being relocated. And why were they being relocated? Because in our mindset, leopards live in forests and people live in towns and villages. This is our home and that is their home, right? And that's how lots and lots of relocations started taking place. Um, and what do you think was the result? The result from this area in her study was an increased number of conflict cases. Why did this happen? This happened because the forests where they were relocating these leopards already had their own population of leopards. Secondly, very often the relocated leopards, because she put microchips in them and she could study the movement, they found that they tried walking back to what they called their home. You know, another interesting thing about India is that India is a very old civilization. A lot of these human use areas, fields or other places where humans live, have been like this for thousands of years. So it is not new. It is very, very likely that for generations, some of these leopards have lived this way with human beings. Often human beings don't even realize that they may not even have seen a leopard in their lives, with leopards living so close to them. We have spoken to people even in tiger landscapes where a whole lifetime goes by, their cattle gets killed, but they may not have even seen a tiger or a leopard in their whole life, and they've lived by them the entire lifetime. Anyway, so when these relocated leopards start walking back in search of their home, you have a very, very stressed animal. And these animals often created chaos and conflicts all along the way. Uh, they were just in a very, very alien situation. And media didn't help at that time. The kind of headlines we had, I could just find one paper clipping for the presentation, unfortunately, but we have some really sensational, if I may say, headlines, which changes the mindset of people against these predators even more. Uh, do note in this photograph, I know it's not a very clear one, do see how many people, look at the mob that has created near the leopard. Okay, just keep that in mind. We will come back to that later. However, Vidya's study and her team study gave some very interesting revelations. One was that more number of leopards in an area did not equal to more conflicts in that area. Second was, it was pretty clear that most of the encounters where conflict happened, where they were accidental. Why? Because these were mostly non-fatal attacks, which meant that a leopard is not out to kill human beings. They do not recognize human beings as their prey. And third, that relocation was not a solution. It actually increased the problem manyfold. Much more important than that, a learning, or rather, I would actually call it a reminder for us, was the attitudes of local people, the basic attitude of Indians. Here is a picture of a leopard that fell into a well in one of the villages. And look at this photograph of the rescue. Just look at this photograph. Look how the young leopard has been held. Of course, it was tranquilized, and look at the number of people who've shown up to help in this sort of uh, this activity. Another one, is this one. Again, another part of India where a leopard had fallen into a well. The float that you're seeing there is actually a cot. It's a wooden frame with warps and wefts of cord. This is the most common bedding for a rural Indian. This is where most people sleep, and somebody's bed was improvised to make into a float to help rescue this leopard out of the well and to save it. And another big reminder, a very, very interesting one, is that there are many tribes in India who have worshipped wildcats since centuries. All these idols and sort of carvings that you're seeing here depict a wildcat. This could be a tiger or a leopard. In the area where Vidya was studying them, this god, this deity, is called Vaghoba. Vag means big cat, and ba is just like a suffix for respect. So that's why this deity is called Vaghoba. The second picture from the left that you're seeing is estimated to be over 1,000 years old. So when you hear these tribal people talking, they say that this deity of the big cat is our protector. And if you ask them, but don't you get angry when they attack your cattle and your other domesticated animals? And their reply is very often a plain, simple answer which says, don't you throw a tantrum when you're hungry? They say, don't you pick the first thing and eat when you're really, really hungry? So it's okay if they take one of our animal once in a while. This is the tolerance that Indians have lived with for many, many years. They had a way of peaceful coexistence much before any modern conservation plans came into being. Moving on. Not just that, Mumbai actually had good news. So these Mumbai leopards who have been walking these narrow alleys between homes were actually doing a good deed for all the residents of Mumbai in that area. And that is by keeping the number of incidents of deaths due to rabies down. Mumbai has so many leopards because of stray dogs. I know a lot of us are dog lovers, and this is not a great photo to be looking at, but they do a public service. So, with all of this, with a fantastic base of good scientific reports and study, they found that there was actually an easier way to deal with conflict. One simple thing, garbage management. Keep the garbage management better, and you don't have so many stray dogs feeding off throwaways, and thus you keep the population of leopards in check. For rural India, keep secure pens for your cattle, especially at night, and that will keep the number of leopards in check and also how many come close to human beings. If you're walking at night, just make a noise. They found that this was a very, very efficient way. Just sing a song, play a song on your radio, and walk through at night if you need to. And leopards actually keep away. In places like Mumbai and other places closer to cities, they also did a lot of workshops with media professionals to not sensationalize news of leopard conflicts and or any animal conflict for that matter, and keep it at try to show both sides of the story. Why did that happen? How did it happen? If at all they're reporting these stories. Mob management, very, very important, and awareness amongst people who are living with leopards. What do you do if you see a leopard? And to do these things before they have an encounter of leopards, and not try to do it while there is a frenzy amongst people when this is happening. So conservation wise, it taught us a lot. It taught us that it was time to shift the focus. It was much easier for us conservationists or people who love animals to work with people and change our mindsets, especially about that should be their home and this should be our home, that kind of intolerance, rather than try to control what the leopard should do. So yeah, this is the very, very fascinating story about how leopards are living in this country. And we actually have lots of other stories like this of lots of other animals, but maybe another time. So thank you all. I hope you enjoyed it.
Great, excellent, excellent introduction to leopards there, Payal, and
Thank you.
very, very succinct. And I think there's a lot there for us to think about, for sure. And I guess if we're visiting as well, visiting India to look forward to. And I think travelers would be surprised to see some of those places where leopards are living. It is pretty incredible, isn't it?
Yeah,
I have a couple of questions here, Payal, that
sure.
will read to you. From Diane. Diane is asking, with reference to the leopard with a pot on its head, was the pot ever removed? Do we know the end of that story?
Yes, very good question. Maybe I should have spoken about it. Thank you, Dan, for bringing it up. Yes, it was. So the forest department was able to reach well in time, and they tranquilized the leopard. And very slowly and carefully, the pot was removed, and the leopard was relocated just at the outskirts of the same city. There was a happy ending.
Great, that's good. Another question is, when was that the news clipping with the leopard and the mob, the leopard that was coming down the stairwell and you had that group of
Yeah.
people? What year was that
I
indoor?
can, yeah, I can check that, but I think it was 2003 or 4.
Okay.
I can check that and get back to you.
Sure, that would be great. And we can send that. That was Helen's question. We can send that reply to Helen.
Yeah, thank you, Helen.
Another question from Diane. I think the same Diane. Are leopards immune to rabies?
Um, I am not sure, Diane.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I can check that one.
That's a good question. I would think that they're not immune.
Yeah,
Presumably a dog could pass it to the leopard. I'm not sure if this is the nature of the question, if the dog bit the leopard, but I have a very strong suspicion that the dog will have no idea that there's a leopard there before it turns into
yeah,
prey, right? How,
yeah.
how, how do we know, how much do we know about how leopards stalk their prey like dogs in an urban environment? Do we know anything about that?
Yeah, Justin, actually we do. We have videos and CCTV footage from which we know, and it's very, very interesting. Sometimes they even take dogs head on. So if there's a sleeping dog curled up, even just outside your door, and you're living in a leopard habitat, you've forgotten to take your dog in at night. And we have footage of them coming so close to the sleeping dog even before the dog knows, and just as the dog opens its eyes, and even it's like a fraction of a second, before the dog can do anything, the leopard gets it. We have so many footage of that.
Wow.
um, yeah, and also and these not necessarily be like basement or ground floor homes. Even they leopards have climbed up staircases and
Mhm.
taken dogs from multi-story buildings sometimes.
Well, sort of along those lines, and how how leopards are interacting with their environment and other wildlife. How do leopards, because of course you're talking about tigers and lions being in India, and presuming, and I mean I know just from going that the leopards are living in the same places that the tigers and lions are living. How do leopards get along with those other bigger cats?
Very good question. So leopard, like is almost a third of the size of a tiger. So even though it is a big cat, amongst the big cats, it's actually quite small in size. And in those situations, we have seen that leopards will avoid any kind of confrontation with the big cats. They will evade them. They will have activity hours or areas of their territory they will change depending on where the tiger or the leopard is or the lion is active. We have seen that.
Um, a question here from Linda. Thank you for that, Payal. Question here from Linda is, how do leopards adapt to elephant grass? So like if you're in Assam where you have these huge grasses, I guess in places like that, tigers are using that as cover for hunting. How do leopards interact with that environment where you have very tall ground cover?
Very much the same way, actually. They do use it as cover. Yeah, they have just adapted to living in all kinds of grasslands, whether be it the elephant grasses of Assam or the short grasslands of Rajasthan. Uh, yeah, they managed to use that as ambush or cover their prey.
Yeah, I guess they just have to avoid the tigers and they'll be okay. Another question, let me see here.
Yeah.
It's a good question. I'm not sure that any of us can answer. Is it advisable to domesticate a big cat?
Ah, very, very difficult. Uh, I don't know how to say that. I personally don't think it is a good idea. There have been many problems that we have seen with domestication. Actually, not surprisingly, a lot of those cases are from United States, and you must have seen where people have had big cats and sometimes they escape or even cause injuries to their own owners. They are very, very difficult to domesticate. Even house cats, can be so frisky, sometimes in nature. Imagine having a 200-kilo big tiger in your house, or in your yard.
Yeah.
It's very, very difficult.
Yeah. So I have a great question here. Thank you, Payal. Another
Sure.
question. If we travel to India, where are we most likely to see a tiger? I think we know the answer because the tour goes to the place, but maybe you can
Exactly.
tell us a little bit more, Payal, and what makes those places special.
I'm so biased towards this. I love that question, and I'm not just saying because this is a Quest webinar, but so the tiger place where we go to is a national park called Rantambo National Park. Please feel free to look it up. There, it's a very, very popular. It's one of the most visited parks in India. Uh, it is a prime tiger habitat. It falls in the semi-arid region of West India, which means that there is not as thick vegetation cover. So we have a lot of places in India which have very good populations of tigers, but sometimes in these places it is such beautiful thick forests that viewing the tiger becomes difficult. However, where Quest goes, Ranthambore, which is also me and my husband's one of our favorite parks in India, that one being semi-arid is a dry forest with not as much vegetation cover, which makes visibility better. And better visibility means better chances of seeing the tiger.
Great, thanks. And I don't know if I misspoke, but you discussed tigers, but what about leopards?
Oh, sorry.
I intended
Okay.
I intended to ask leopards, and I don't remember now if I said tigers or leopards. But
I'm sorry, I don't know if yeah, okay, either way. So leopards, okay, so there's another, so where that's again, we go to a fantastic place in India. You saw the pictures of the rocky habitats, the photographs of the rocky habitats, the leopard in the rocky habitat. Again, very little vegetation cover, and that place is actually so much a representation of the story I just told you, where you have these open rocky outcrops, which has a very high density of leopards living there. And all around this rocky habitat, you have villages. And that's where we drive around to look for leopards. We spend about 2 nights there and do morning and evening drives to look for leopards. And of course, along we have had excellent sightings so far, and I hope they continue. But along with the leopards, as always is in any part of India or elsewhere, you see so much more wildlife, including excellent bird life.
yeah, and so Linda's asking where these rocky places. These are Rajasthan state, so we're talking western India, Aravalli Hills, kind of the bottom of those hills. Another couple of questions here. I think you sort of covered it, but I think Patty's looking for maybe a more explicit answer. Do leopards and tigers cohabit, or do they tend to have their own territories? And what do you say?
Yeah, so yes, they cohabit very much and their territories overlap. They have to overlap. Tigers have much bigger territories, especially a male tiger. And within his territory, there could be, on an average, in a healthy forest, 3 or 4 leopards living.
Interesting. Another question, and I guess, of course, leopards being able tree climbers can just get out of the way. If there's a tiger, they can retreat very easily and do that. Question here, do we know anything about the sizes, relative sizes of leopards in different habitats, and also in places where there are or are not other big cats like tigers or lions? Do we find if there's competition or pressure for the common prey that, let's say, tigers and leopards share, are the leopards, do they tend to be smaller, for example?
Yeah, very, very interestingly, and I have given this a thought before, we have not found a very big difference actually. And I would like to state another example at this point. So if you look at the map of India, right at the bottom, there is like a pearl drop, a teardrop shaped island called Sri Lanka. And in Sri Lanka, leopards are the biggest big cat. So they do not, so Sri Lanka, which is so close to India, doesn't have lions or tigers. Leopard is their biggest cat. And even there, if you compare leopards there versus the leopards in India, we have not really seen a major size difference at all in comparison to these populations.
Interesting, very interesting. So the
Great question.
yeah, that's great. And I think, let's see if I have any other questions here that I haven't covered. Oh yes, here's a good question. Do Indian naturalists communicate with Chinese naturalists who also specialize in big cats?
Okay, I don't know about all big cats. I'm not aware, but I do know that as far as snow leopard conservation goes, because over there we're literally border to border with China, right? The northernmost part of India is where snow leopards live, and a large part of that is shared with China. And in snow leopard conservation, especially an organization called the Snow Leopard Trust has brought together 13 countries, including China, together to sort of forget about political differences and border issues and work towards the conservation of the snow leopard. So amongst the big cat, I know certainly for sure that we are talking to China about the snow leopard.
Excellent, very good. So that was I think that's all for questions that I can see here. So thank you to everyone for asking your questions and for attending our webinar today. And of course, thank you, Payal, for giving us this nice taste of the life of leopards in India. And just as a reminder, if you'd like to see leopards, you can go to Africa or you can come to India. And we do have the Grand Northwest India Tour, which is scheduled for February and March of 2022. It's a nice tour that gives you a really good exposure to a whole variety of habitats. And we look for tigers, lions, and leopards, and everything in between. And there's so much. They're one of our highly rated trips. And of course, with Payal, our very highly rated Indian naturalist. So you can join Chris early for that trip with Payal in 2022. And of course, if you want to see the other big cat, the snow leopard, that one is taking place in April of 2021, once again with Payal. So thank you, everybody. And we will be sending out the recording to this presentation to all of the attendees as well. And we hope you'll join us for a future webinar, and we'll see you on tour. Feel free to call or to write if you have any questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Justin.